Chancellor, Professor Barry McGaw has had a distinguished career in education research and policy. Following an early career as a science teacher, then head of the Research and Curriculum branch in the Queensland Department of Education, he was appointed at the age of 34 as Professor of Education at Murdoch University. There he established a reputation that led to influential roles in education research and policy as Executive Director of the Australian Council for Education Research in Melbourne and Director for Education at the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris. Following retirement from the OECD, he took a series of part-time roles in the Melbourne Graduate School of Education, including Founding Director of the Melbourne Education Research Institute, a Vice-Chancellor's Fellow, and Interim Director of the Assessment Research Centre. He continues at the University of Melbourne as a part-time Professorial Fellow and co-director of the Australian National Development Index project. Professor McGaw served on the Commonwealth Tertiary Education Commission and chaired reviews of upper secondary curriculum and assessment in WA and the ACT, and undertook a major review of the New South Wales Higher School Certificate as a sole reviewer. In 2008, he was appointed by the Australian Government as the Foundation Chair of the Australian Curriculum, Assessment and Reporting Authority, ACARA, which produced the first national curriculum for Australia, now adopted foundation to Year 10 right across the country. Alongside his leadership roles, Professor McGaw has more than 100 personal publications. Professor McGaw has also made a substantial contribution to professional associations, including the Academy of Social Sciences in Australia and the Australian College of Educators. Chancellor, I present to you Emeritus Professor Barry McGaw for admission to the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
I now invite Professor Barry McGaw to deliver this morning's occasional address.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, Dean, graduands, ladies and gentlemen. I delivered my first university graduation occasional address in Adelaide in 2011 on April Fool's Day. Beforehand, Alan Fells, then Chair of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, advised me that there were three things one should do in delivering an occasional address on an event like this. First, say what an honour it is to have been invited. Second, say I'm not worthy of the honour. And third, prove it. I hope I won't do that today. What I want to do for the graduands is to take you on part of the journey through which my own understanding of equity in Australian education has been sharpened. In the 1990s, I was commissioned to review the curriculum and assessment in the New South Wales Higher School Certificate. Now, as in all states at that time, a range of subjects offered at the upper secondary school had been broadened. And New South Wales had done that too, but had in addition widened the range of courses within a subject. In English, for example, there were 4 courses differentiated by level of intellectual demand. Now, I had statewide data on students' performance at Year 10, and I looked at what enrolment patterns they showed in Year 11. And I looked only at government non-selective high schools in the northern beach suburbs of Sydney and in southwestern Sydney. And what I found was, looking only at the high performers from Year 10, those in the northern beach suburbs chose one or other of the 2 most demanding English courses, while those in the southwest of Sydney, also in the top group at Year 10, chose one of the 2 least demanding courses. Why the difference? The schools in the northern suburbs generally didn't offer the 2 least demanding courses, and the schools in the southwest generally didn't offer the 2 most demanding courses. So a pattern of provision designed to cater for individual differences on the grounds of equity produced an outcome that was entirely inequitable. I recommended that the solution was to have less differentiation. Critics said that would dumb down the curriculum. I said no, it'll level it up. But I had no data to prove that would be possible. The government actually bought the argument and did reduce the degree of differentiation. In 1990, a couple of years later, I went to the OECD just as the OECD was about to introduce its program on international student assessment. In the first assessments in 2000, Australia was among the highest performing countries, behind only Finland in reading and equal with Finland in maths and science. But the data also showed that in Australia, differences in students' social backgrounds made more difference in their educational achievements than similar differences did in some other high-performing countries like Canada, Korea, Japan and Finland. Australian education was high quality, our data showed, but it was low equity. Now I had the evidence that I needed when I was doing the New South Wales Higher School Certificate Review. It is possible to produce high quality and high equity at the same time. We just were not one of the countries managing that. And the important point I want to make is this: without data, we would not know this. Now, since 2000, Australia's gone in the wrong direction on both counts. Quality has declined and equity has declined as well. Our data have become lower in quality and more inequitable. And without data, we wouldn't know that either. To turn this around, we'll need to see improvement at the school level, where many of you are going to be working. The My School website compares schools with students from similar social backgrounds and reveals very marked differences among schools with such similar students. Those with low-performing students can't blame the students or their families, because others with similar students are doing so much better. The high-performing schools can be a source of inspiration as well as a source of advice about what might be more appropriate practices. But without data, they wouldn't know where to look. One significant critic of NAPLAN said that NAPLAN should be abolished because student performances haven't improved. That's like saying that if the diet you're on isn't reducing your weight, the solution is to throw away the scales. By all means, join debates about what we should measure in education, but don't turn your back on data. Data are driving changes everywhere in our modern lives. I was in South Korea last week at the 6th OECD World Forum on Statistics, Knowledge and Policy. The Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz emphasised the importance of data and metrics in shaping behaviour in a wide range of domains, both public and private. In your professional practice, you'll have many sources of information on the progress of your students, including your very own local clinical assessments. Embrace them, but don't abandon the evidence that comes from larger data sets that give you a broader perspective. Without the evidence that such data can provide, I would still be where I was, reviewing the New South Wales Higher School Certificate, saying you could achieve high quality and high equity at the same time. Now, I know you can. Thank you.